I'm Dr. Subodh Chaturvedi. I am an anesthesiologist by profession. You all are anesthesiologists by profession. I have worked in cardiac anesthesia for a good 10 years, and now I am working in bariatric anesthesia. And in both these branches, ABG has been an integral part of my life. When I was doing my SRship in Apollo, I used to see like 8 to 10 ABGs every night in like 6 hours or sometime. I used to see 8 to 10 ABGs every hour. We used to get 2 to 3 ABGs, and it has become like something like a spinal reflex. Now in bariatric, we see entirely different kind of ABGs. So first of all, my disclaimer or disclosure is that I have no financial disclosure, obviously. And the second bigger disclosure is nobody can teach or learn ABG in 30 minutes. In a 30 or 40 minutes lecture, it is impossible to learn anything like ECG, ABG, X-ray or whatever. But still, we all know ABG, we all have seen ABGs, we all have interpreted ABGs. So I'll try to make a good 9 or 10 take-home points, which I would like to stress on, that these things we should do when we are interpreting an ABG. The thing is that ABG is a complicated subject. It is like people take years to gather it, but we'll try to gather as much as possible in these 30 minutes, whatever we can do. I would like this session to be interactive, but I don't know how it is possible with Zoom. If I ask some question and some people can write the answers, the options in chat, then it will be very good for me. Otherwise, I keep going. That's okay. But it will be better if we can make it an interactive kind of session. So, an ABG judges three things: the oxygenation status of patient, the ventilation status of patient, and the acid-base status of patient. Oxygenation means if the oxygen is going to the blood. Ventilation means if he is pushing out his CO2, and what is his acid-base status. You might find a few things very, very basic and a few things very, very complicated, but I'm trying to mix and match for every kind of audience, especially the PGs. I expect at least a dozen PGs to join this webinar. So an ABG judges three things: oxygenation, ventilation, and acid-base status. Let's jump to the first ABG right away. Like I said, one small trial we'll try to do. If you can write something in chat as an answer to my question, then it will be wonderful. So I'll put up a question and I'll ask if it is normal or not. Yes or no, you can write. So first case. This is an ABG. We all have seen ABGs. This is like one of them. Do you think this ABG is normal? If you can write in chat box, I'll wait for 20 seconds. Otherwise, I'll answer. Is this ABG normal? Two no's are there. 4 are there. Oh, a lot of no's are there. Okay. Wow. The units are standard units. No question about that. Whenever it is not mentioned, there are a lot of no's. So yeah, this ABG is not normal. But then, having said that, did I tell you the saturation of the patient? First point is, whenever you see an ABG, ask for the SpO2 on the monitor before commenting on oxygenation. Now, what if I told you the saturation on monitor was 97% and patient was comfortable? Then this becomes a VBG. There was a sampling error. So the first take-home point is, in analyzing an ABG, now there are 7 steps and 10 steps, and first we'll see this and first we'll see that. The first thing we'll see is what is the saturation on the monitor. Is the PaO2 corresponding to that saturation or not? So first thing we'll see is SpO2 on the monitor before commenting on oxygenation. If the SpO2 is also around like 65, 70, then this is really abnormal and we should go and intubate this patient. But if it is completely normal, then it could be a VBG. Now coming to the point of VBG, how will we differentiate between a VBG and an ABG? छोटी छोटी सी बातें दो तीन. The pH, PCO2 and bicarb of a VBG are more or less same as an ABG. The only thing that differs is PaO2. But this PaO2 is also in the range of below 45. If this PaO2 is around 60, 65, or a saturation SaO2 in a VBG is approximately 75%, then it is probably an arterial blood gas with low saturation rather than a VBG. In a VBG, the PaO2 is always around 40, 45, or even below that, whatever the oxygenation status be, right? So before judging or jumping on an ABG, the first thing we'll see is the saturation on monitor. Second ABG we'll go for. Now this ABG, this looks perfectly normal. Is this normal or not? Again, I'm waiting for the answers on my mobile chat. Normal, yes, 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 yes. No, why no? एक दो और, एक नो को छोड़ के most of it is yes, but two of them, Dr. Bala Subramaniam and Dr. Arun B. Yeah. Now, again, before judging the PaO2, we should always know the FiO2. This PaO2 is very normal if I say that it was an ABG of a patient on room air. Again, the take-home point is that always look at the clinical picture. Ask, just make a call to the ICU, ask how is the patient, patient कैसा है, वेंटिलेटर पे है कि ऑक्सीजन पे है कि बेहोश पड़ा है. Unless until you know the FiO2, we should not judge the PaO2. This PaO2 is absolutely normal if the patient is breathing room air. But if the same patient, same ABG, is on ventilator with an FiO2 of 50, then this is seriously in trouble. This is probably ARDS. So a PaO2 which is looking normal is not always normal. We should judge only after knowing the FiO2. If FiO2 is, let's go to FiO2 part also. The PaO2 should be 4 to 5 times of the FiO2. That means here we'll consider FiO2 not in the fraction system by mathematics. We'll consider 21%, 30%, 40%. So the PaO2 should be 4 to 5 times of FiO2. So on room air, the FiO2 is 21%. We all know the PaO2 should be around 90 to 100. If it is not 4 to 5 times, obviously, then it should be at least a minimum of 3 times. So on room air, at least a 60-65% ka FiO2, PaO2 to chahiye. If it is less than a minimum of 3 times, then we will consider that there is a severe gas exchange problem. If PaO2 is not according to the FiO2, then there is a severe gas exchange problem. There might be so many things. There could be a problem with the gas exchange system, something like pneumonitis, something like a pulmonary edema, something filled in interstitium, whatever that might be. But the PaO2 should be at least 3 times, ideally 4 to 5 times. If it is below 2 times, it is considered to be in ARDS pattern rather than anything else. So the PaO2 should be 4 to 5 times of FiO2. My first 2 take-home points are A, always check the ABG with the saturation on monitor, the routine monitor. Secondly, always comment on PaO2 only after knowing the FiO2. So for PG students, you might already know the FiO2 of various oxygen delivery devices, but now this is COVID call, so maybe why not revise it for a minute. The FiO2 of nasal cannula is 21 plus 4 per liter. That means room air is 21% air. If we start a nasal cannula on 1 per liter, on 1 liter per minute, then it will be 21 plus 4, 25% FiO2. If it is on 2, then it is 25 plus 4, 29 FiO2. If it is 3 liter, again 4. If it is 4 liter, again 4. So we can give up to a maximum of around 36 to 40 liters, 36 to 40 FiO2 by nasal cannula. That is, we can raise it up to 6 liters per minute. If we have to go beyond 6 liters per minute, then there are problems of intolerance by the patient because of dry air, not humidified. Then we should rather shift to the face mask or maybe HFNC. So FiO2 of nasal cannula is 21 plus 4 per liter. FiO2 of simple face mask is around 40%. So if your patient is on face mask, if you get an ABG and your patient is on face mask and his PaO2 comes to be around 120, then you know that it is just above 2 and even much less than 3 times of the FiO2. So the patient is not having a very good, wonderful gas exchange. And remember, in all these conditions, when PaO2 is above 70, 65, 70, the saturations will be more or less normal. Then comes the NRBM, non-rebreather mask, the famous one now. It is 80 to 90% FiO2 if and only if the two pores are completely valved. The NRBM has 2 valves. If both the valves are present and functioning, then it gives us a FiO2 of 80 to 90%. That is why it is so good with COVID patients. And lastly, a ventilator or an AMBU can generate 100% FiO2. So FiO2 of various oxygen delivery devices we know. So whenever we are seeing an ABG, we should check what is the clinical condition of the patient. If the patient is on a mask or something, if it is a simple mask of 40%, then it should be at least 4 5s or 20. If it is not 200, then at least 180, 160, 150, something like that should be there. On room air, 90 is good. Let's go further. Second take home point was always ask for FiO2 before judging the oxygenation. Now in ABG judges 3 things. We discussed that. Oxygenation, we'll check what is the PaO2 and does it relate well to FiO2. Now let's jump to the second portion, second story. The normal range for PaCO2 is 35 to 45. We all know that. A sudden change in PaCO2 from normal to 25 means that the patient, now the MCQ starts, the sudden PCO2 change from normal to 25 means the patient, there can be multiple correct answers. Try typing correct answers in the, I wrote something wrong. Try typing correct answers in the chat box. Which of these are correct? There can be multiple correct answers. You can write A, C, D, you can write B, E, whatever. If a patient's PCO2 changes from normal to 25, A and D, A and C, A, C, D, all are correct. Okay. A, C, D, A, C, D, E, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, C, D. Okay, we'll come to that answer in a minute. Let's study something else. एक और इसी क्वेश्चन में ऐड कर लेते हैं. Which of these patients will have the highest PCO2? They are 4 different patients. One has tidal volume 500, respiratory rate of 12, यानी 12 पंजे 60, मतलब 6 liter का minute volume. Other one has 4.5 liter का minute volume, 7 liter का minute volume, and whatever the last. Which one will have the highest PCO2? We all know that PCO2 depends on ventilation, how much the patient is breathing. PCO2 is washed out. We obviously know that. So let's say which one, B, C, B, C. Most of them are going for the B. B will have the highest CO2. It looks like he's not ventilating enough. Okay. Now let's go to the third part. There is no way to clinically judge a person's PCO2. You cannot tell by looking at him. You cannot tell by any clinical parameter. You cannot tell by any ventilatory setting. None of these can ensure that this person has highest PCO2. If in the same patient you can say कि okay एक ही बंदा है वो वेंटिलेटर पे है और अलग अलग सेटिंग्स में कब ज्यादा होगी, that is okay, but there are 4 different patients and they have 4 different ventilatory parameters. There is no way to judge, no clinical parameter, no ventilatory setting can tell you that this patient will have a high PCO2 or low PCO2. A patient with profound respiratory distress can have a high, normal or low CO2. Again, only way to judge a person's PCO2 is to get an ABG done. And this PCO2 depends solely upon one thing, which is the PCO2 equation. The PCO2 equation says that PCO2 is equals to VCO2 upon VA into 0.863, which is a multiplier. Let's leave it. PCO2 depends upon only two things. One is how much the CO2 is being produced, and the other one is alveolar ventilation. So any patient who is breathing any amount of tidal volume and minute ventilation can have any PCO2. You can never know, because you don't know his production and you don't know what exactly his alveolar ventilation is. Again, PCO2 depends upon only two things: VCO2, that is production, and VA is alveolar ventilation. Production means if you are running on a treadmill, then maybe your production is increased and maybe you will have higher PCO2, which will be compensated by your alveolar ventilation. But if production is constant in a patient who is bedridden, who is on a ICU bed, the production is more or less constant unless until he goes into a cardiac arrest. PCO2 depends upon only and only alveolar ventilation. And what is alveolar ventilation? Alveolar ventilation is minute ventilation minus dead space ventilation. That is, if 5 liter is going and out of that 5 liter, approximately 1.5 liter is going to the dead space, physiological or otherwise. Those are the two factors that will determine PCO2 level. PCO2 depends on minute ventilation minus dead space ventilation. So conditions that decrease minute ventilation, like somebody is in opioid overdose, then his minute ventilation is decreased, his CO2 will be high. Somebody has a very high dead space ventilation, like somebody who is rapid shallow breathing, then he will have a high PCO2. Or somebody who has a COPD, who has a lot of air trapped in his alveoli, he will have a high PCO2. That is why all COPDs have high PCO2. So PCO2 depends only upon alveolar ventilation. The conditions which increase the dead space ventilation will cause a high PCO2. The conditions which decrease the minute ventilation will cause a high PCO2. Now we'll coming to the question. This patient is hyperventilating for sure. Here, technically, we should use the words hyperventilating and hypoventilating to CO2 status. Tachypnea, bradypnea is okay for clinical terms. Hyperventilation and hypoventilation should be regarding the CO2 status of body. But yes, he is hyperventilating for sure. He has excess alveolar ventilation for the amount of CO2 production. That is true. He must be breathing faster than normal. We cannot be sure of that. He might be taking very deep breaths at a normal rate. Then too, his alveolar ventilation will be high and his PCO2 might go down. Theoretically, we are talking obviously. He must have acute respiratory alkalosis. We don't know. He might be responding to an acute metabolic acidosis. This might be a compensatory mechanism. And he has reached a new steady state for gas exchange? No, because he's hyperventilating. So technically, all the answers are more or less correct. But yes, the two answers which I would suggest they are the most correct are A and B. Again, so take home point 3 is what is we have to check first we check ki SpO2 kitna hai, second is FiO2 kitna hai, third is PCO2 kitna hai, and if it is high, then what is the cause? Is it low minute ventilation or increased dead space? Or maybe the patient was on ventilator and he got a fever temperature, and with this temperature he is having increased production. So 3 things we saw in ABG: oxygenation, ventilation, little of CO2. Now let's go to the third part, which is the more difficult part. Now, this is almost normal looking ABG. Now you think I'm cheating. Does this patient have acidosis or alkalosis? I'll wait. Yes or no, yes or no? No, no. Based on pH, no, obviously. No. Lactate ना acidosis alkalosis pH से देख लेंगे. No. नहीं है भाई, हर चीज ट्रिक क्वेश्चन थोड़ी है. There is no acidosis, no alkalosis. This is a fairly normal ABG. True. There is no acidosis, no alkalosis. What if I change the parameters a little? Let's say this. Let's say I change the parameters and I increase the PCO2 and I increase the bicarb. What will be the new pH value? Again, these are hypothetical ABGs. None of these ABGs are of clinical patients. I'm just making them up. They might not be physiologically correct also. I'm just making up to stress on some particular points that we miss. So what will be the new pH value? Next, इस question का answer करें कि what will be the new pH? Will it be normal? Will it be acidosis? Will it be alkalosis? Depends on compensation, obviously. What will be the new pH? Will it be acidotic? Will it be alkalotic? Could be both, could be anything, definitely. Right. So that takes us to the next equation, which is called as the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, the HH equation, this Darauni equation, pH is equal to 6.1 plus log bicarb upon PCO2. The simple maths of this equation is that the pH depends on two things. Rather, only a single thing. The pH depends on the ratio of the bicarbonate to the carbon dioxide. It doesn't depend on bicarb alone. It doesn't depend on CO2 alone. It depends on the ratio of bicarb to carbon dioxide. And in the previous question, if we have doubled both the values, then possibly the new pH will also be normal. That doesn't mean that the patient does not have acidosis or alkalosis, but the pH could be normal. So it takes us to four terms: acidemia, alkalemia, acidosis, and alkalosis. Acidemia means pH less than 7.35. Alkalemia means pH more than 7.45. But acidosis means a process which is occurring in the body which is trying to take the pH down towards 7.35 se niche. Alkalosis means a process occurring in the body which is trying to drag the pH upwards. These are four different terms. So yes, this patient might not have acidemia or alkalemia, but he has acidosis and alkalosis both. This is what I want to stress upon, that a patient can have a normal pH and yet can have mixed or any kind of acid-base disorder. Acidosis, alkalosis are different things, and they can be occurring with a normal pH also. So that takes us to two more terms, that is primary acid-base disorder and compensation. Let's go there. So take home point 4 means a normal pH does not mean that acid-base status is normal. This patient, this hypothetical patient, might have a normal pH, but he will be having a profound respiratory acidosis and a bicarb of 48, that means a metabolic alkalosis also. So this was the take home point 4. So what is the primary acid-base disorder? The primary acid-base disorder is the one which is trying to drag the pH along with it. that disorder which is in the direction of pH. That means we all know that when bicarbonate is less, it will try to drag the pH down. It will create metabolic acidosis. Same way, if CO2 is high, it will cause respiratory acidosis. If CO2 is less, it will cause respiratory alkalosis. So primary acid-base disorder is that one which is trying to drag the pH along. So if the pH is acidemic and bicarbonate is less, then the primary disorder is metabolic acidosis. If pH is more and bicarbonate is less, then there could be an underlying metabolic acidosis, but it is not the primary acid-base disorder. Again, I'll repeat, a primary acid-base disorder is something which is in the direction of pH. That means if the pH is acidotic and CO2 is high, then CO2 is trying to drag the pH towards lower side, and CO2 is the primary acid-base disorder. That means the respiratory is the primary acid-base disorder. There are 4 primary acid-base disorders. Obviously, we all know that. Metabolic acidosis, when bicarb is less and pH is low. Respiratory acidosis, when CO2 is more and pH is low. Metabolic alkalosis, when bicarb is more and pH is high. And respiratory alkalosis, when CO2 is low and pH is high. Like good 10 years, these dirty images are roaming around the internet, so I had reason to put them. These are, I mean, very ugly, but they are very self-explanatory. A respiratory acidosis or alkalosis is always like a seesaw. pH will go down, CO2 will go up, and vice versa. While a metabolic is more like a swing, a jhula. The pH and bicarbonate will go in the same direction. If bicarb will increase, pH will increase. If bicarb is decreased, pH will decrease. In respiratory, it is more like a seesaw. pH will decrease if CO2 increases and vice versa. So these are the primary acid-base disorder. Let's see some practice problems. Now we are getting good answers. So let's take a single minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 disorders are there, one by one. Or let's do it together only. कि 1 is metabolic acidosis and 2 is this. Okay, one by one karte hain. 1 is what? pH is 7.48. PCO2 is a little less. We all know the normal values and all. Na? I haven't put any of the things which is routinely available in books in the PPT. Number 1 is what? Number 1 is, first we'll solve number 1. Number 1 is respiratory alkalosis. Why respiratory alkalosis? pH is high, almost normal, yeah, almost normal. pH is on the higher side and PCO2 is on the lower side, bicarbonate is fixed. So it is respiratory alkalosis. Let's come to second now. In second one, pH is on the lower side, bicarbonate is almost normal, maybe a little increased, and PCO2 is on the higher side. So what does it indicate? It is respiratory acidosis. Could be mixed, never know. But right now we are trying to just simply identify primary acid-base disorders. Second is respiratory acidosis. Again, third one is what? Second is respiratory acidosis also, because this PaO2 and saturation is also on the lower side. Third one is what? Third one is pH is low, PCO2 is almost normal, bicarbonate is low. Third is metabolic acidosis, fine. Fourth is what? मैंने भी देखी नहीं, बस copy paste मार दिया. Fourth is what? Fourth is high bicarb, high pH, metabolic alkalosis. Fourth is high bicarb, high pH. Fourth is metabolic alkalosis. Fifth is भास्कर सर, सौरभ सर का कोई न्यूज?
Not reached yet. Need to continue further.
Okay, sir. So fourth हो गया. Fourth one is metabolic alkalosis. Fifth is what? Fifth is pH is low, PCO2 is borderline, bicarb is severely low. So it is again metabolic acidosis. Sixth is written as 1, but it is number 6. PCO2 is high, bicarb is normal, pH is low, then it is again. Sixth one is what? Sixth is respiratory acidosis. Sixth is respiratory acidosis. Seventh one is last one, again high bicarb, high pH, high bicarb, high pH, metabolic alkalosis. So now we have basically gone through all of them, and we have almost all of us have diagnosed all these primary acid-base disorders correctly. Now there could be some small underlying mixed acid-base disorders that is more for exam purpose or theoretical purpose. हमें यहाँ पर practically whatever we need to know in real life ABG situations, that is more of my interest to teach. So let's go further. This is a case of acidosis that I have already written. What type of acidosis it is? We all know that. pH is low, bicarbonate is a little lower side. PCO2 is 76, very, very high. This is a respiratory acidosis. This is a respiratory acidosis. Now, the big question, the bad question is, would you like to give him soda bicarb? Because right now you might say no, but I have seen thousands of ABGs, and in hundreds of them there was respiratory acidosis and the patient was given soda bicarb. Soda bicarbonate we try to treat as the Ramban or whatever you call as the coronal of acidosis, and we try to give every patient the soda bicarb thing. But one point, again I haven't put a take home point for last 5-10 minutes. One point we have to focus on is a respiratory acidosis does not need soda bicarb. A low pH is a dangerous thing. It can be harmful for life, but somebody who is having a high PCO2, if you give him soda bicarb, what will happen? This soda bicarb will go and break into water and CO2, and he is already not able to expel out his own CO2. It is a disaster. Don't give soda bicarb to a patient who is in respiratory acidosis. Also, if you go to OT, just try one day. Just fill a 20 ml syringe with the 20 ml soda bicarb, and a patient who is in GA, just give him that soda bicarb quickly in 1 minute. You will see a rise in EtCO2. But somebody who is in respiratory acidosis, he's not able to wash out his CO2. That is why he's into respiratory acidosis. So if you give soda bicarb to somebody and he cannot eliminate it through lungs, then it will be a disaster for him. Soda bicarb is reserved for a very few certain cases where it should be given. Otherwise, most of the time in high anion gap acidosis and all, it should be better avoided. So take home point number 5 is don't give soda bicarb to every acidosis. Let's move further. What is compensation? Compensation is an attempt to normalize the pH, but this compensation is never actually successful. Compensation tries to bring the pH back to normal away from the primary acid-base derangement, but it is never actually successful. It is always partially compensated. It never gets fully compensated, and thanks God for that. And it never ever gets overcompensated. Again, compensation in ABG means there are two systems. I'll go there. Compensation, let's go to the slide only. There are two means of compensation. One is the metabolic system and other is the respiratory system. Now, if there is metabolic acidosis, then the respiratory system will try to compensate by hyperventilating. And if there is metabolic alkalosis, the respiratory system will try to compensate by hypoventilating, but then just remember it cannot hypoventilate beyond a certain point, right? So these compensations are never fully compensations, they are always partial compensations. They can go to near normal, but it will never be fully normal and it will never be overcompensated. Again, there are two systems for compensation. We know that there are bicarbonate buffers, then there is respiratory system, then there is metabolic system, which is mainly done by kidneys. So if there is respiratory acidosis, then the kidneys will try to compensate by bicarbonate retention. If there is respiratory alkalosis, then the kidneys will try to excrete more bicarb so that the pH can be maintained. Our body is obsessed by two things. One is the pH and other is electrical neutrality, means the number of cations and number of anions should be always equal. So compensation is to compensate for the primary acid-base disorder in the reverse direction, and it is never fully compensated. Compensation is always in the same direction. If PCO2 is decreased, then bicarb will decrease. If PCO2 is increased, then bicarb will increase. If bicarb is decreased, then PCO2 will decrease. If bicarb is increased, then PCO2 will increase. What does it mean? A patient, like the second number, a patient has respiratory acidosis. He is holding on to his CO2. What will happen? He will go into respiratory acidosis. His pH will go down. The kidneys will try to increase the bicarb by preventing their excretion by retaining bicarb so that the pH is brought to normal. Same way, if a patient is in metabolic acidosis, severe metabolic acidosis, prolonged metabolic acidosis, then he will keep hyperventilating, washing off his CO2 so that that pH change is brought to normal. So the compensation works in the same direction as the primary disorder. Again, that ugly image. Metabolic compensation is like if pH is low because bicarb was low, then PCO2 will also be low for compensation. If pH is high, bicarb will be obviously high, and PCO2 will try to become high to compensate for that. And respiratory, as always, is a seesaw. The CO2 and CO3 will go against the direction of pH. Let's move further. How do we compensate? How do we calculate the compensation of metabolic disorder? I'm not going into compensation of all the disorders. Mostly in ICUs, in OTs, the real significant problems are metabolic acidosis. So I'll consider only that because I had planned for a 30-minute lecture only. Compensation of metabolic disorder is by Winter's formula we calculate. How do we calculate? If a patient is acidotic, let's say his bicarbonate is 12. So what should be his PaCO2? We'll calculate like this. If his bicarbonate is 12, then we'll do 1.5 into that bicarb. That will make it 18. Then we'll add 8 to it. Then 18 plus 8 will be 26. So his CO2 should be around 26. How do we calculate compensation of metabolic acidosis? It is by Winter's formula. We calculate expected PaCO2 with this formula. But this is too difficult to remember, and you cannot take pen paper at the bedside of a patient. So we'll come to a simpler formula. This is again my take-home point, that the CO2 will move 1 mmHg for every 1 milliequivalent bicarb. I'll explain it. Only we are talking about metabolic acidosis. If a patient has a bicarb of say 20 or 18, that means his bicarb should have been 24, but now it is 18. So there is a gap of 6. CO2 will also move 1 mmHg for this 1 milliequivalent bicarb. So CO2 should have been 35. It will also move 6 down and it will come to 29. So if somebody has a bicarb of 18, then he should have a CO2 of 29 approximately. One more very interesting thing which is not written in many books, that if you want to check the compensation of metabolic acidosis, the CO2 should be equal to last 2 digits of pH. Again, I'll repeat. You see a patient, you see a ABG, the the pH is 7.25 and the PCO2 is 25, and instantly you know that yes, he is adequately compensated for his acidosis. Again, I'll repeat. If you see a patient who is in metabolic acidosis, whatever the bicarb be, obviously bicarb is low because he's in metabolic acidosis. If he is in metabolic acidosis, his pH is around 7.20, 7.25, 7.31, then his PCO2 should be approximately, एक दो का ऊपर नीचे चलेगा, approximately equal to the last two digits of the acidotic pH. This works in acidosis only, and that too above a PCO2, above a pH of 7.10. I'll explain you why. PCO2 should be equal to last two digits of pH. If a patient is in metabolic acidosis, his PCO2 should be approximately equal to the last two digits. Secondly, CO2 will move 1 mmHg for 1 millicurie bicarb. If bicarb is 6 less, then PCO2 will be 6 less. Let's take an example that will make it more clear, I hope. There is an ABG with a PCO2 of 7.25, bicarbonate is 11, and PCO2 is even, I cannot read that because of this thing. Just a moment. PCO2 is 23. PCO2 is 23. Now by Winter's formula, CO2 should be 1.5 into 11 plus 8, that is 24.5, and CO2 is 23. So it is adequately compensated. If we simply see that PCO2 23 is more or less equal to the last two digits of pH, we know that yes, this patient is adequately compensated for his metabolic acidosis. Now, what if his PCO2 was not 23 and rather 32? What will be the condition? Now I'll wait for the answers. I'll explain. Somebody has written, please repeat which part? Aviral. Which part, Aviral? The last part. Okay. Okay, I'll go back again. See, the technical way of calculating compensation for metabolic disorders is Winter's formula. Winter's formula is very simple. In acidosis, you multiply bicarb by 1.5, then you add 8 to it, and you calculate the expected PCO2. Right? In alkalosis, you multiply bicarb by 0.7, you add 21 to it, and then you get the expected PCO2. But Winter's formula is difficult. There is an easier and bedside way to calculate compensation. One is that the CO2 will move 1 mmHg for each milliequivalent bicarb. That means if somebody is having acidosis, metabolic acidosis, of course, his bicarb is going down from 24 to, let's say, 20. His bicarb has gone down 4 notch. So his CO2 will also go down 4 notch. How? CO2 was 35, it will go up to 30, 31. He will have some hyperventilation so that he can compensate for his metabolic acidosis. Again, second thing is that the CO2 should be equal to last two digits of pH in metabolic acidosis. If this guy has a pH of 7.30 and his PCO2 is around 29 or 30, then we know that he is adequately compensated. But what if in this particular case, his CO2 was not 23 but 31? What will be there? What will be the disorder? Yes, metabolic acidosis without adequate compensation, or there could be practically a metabolic acidosis and a respiratory acidosis. Both are in the same direction. Yes, it could be a mixed disorder. It could be uncompensated metabolic acidosis. So again, metabolic acidosis is the most dreadful thing in an ICU. That is why I took only that. I didn't take other disorders. Metabolic acidosis, you can clinically bedside just see in a second that yes, pH is 7.25, PCO2 is 23, adequately compensated. pH is 7.25, PCO2 is 40. That means he has a respiratory and metabolic acidosis. इसको भी correct करो और probably ventilate करो. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Take home point 6 is in metabolic acidosis, compensation can be easily calculated by CO2, and it equals last two digits of pH. Now this is a little difficult case, but I guess we have a very good audience, we'll solve it. Read it carefully for 30 seconds. There are so many things written. Just tell me what is his acid-base status. चलो वन बाय वन क्रैक करते हैं. The pH is acidotic or alkalotic? In this case, pH is alkalotic, 7.45, borderline, normal to high, alkalosis side, almost borderline. pH is alkalotic. PCO2 is obviously on the lower side, and bicarbonate is on the lower side. So what do you say is the primary acid-base disorder? There is alkalemia, to be precise, but there is acidosis and alkalosis both. No? The pH is borderline or high normal. The pH is almost on the verge of alkalemia, but PCO2 is in the direction of alkalosis and bicarbonate is in the direction of acidosis. Saurabh sir again?
No.
Okay.
We'll wind up in 5 minutes.
Okay.
We have Saurabh sir with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll come to this thing a little later, in a minute. Just try to remember this case, maybe take a screenshot or whatever. We'll come to this case in a minute. Now, we all know that our body is obsessed with electroneutrality. That means the number of cations should be number of anions. And to maintain that electroneutrality, it tries whatever is possible. What is anion gap? Anion gap means that we can measure sodium, we can measure chloride, and we can measure bicarbonate. But to maintain electroneutrality, there are so many anions which are mostly proteins and especially albumin, and some unmeasured anions like phosphates and sulfates and everything, which constitute a small part of your anions, which is unmeasured. And this unmeasured anion is the anion gap. It is calculated. You all know how it is calculated. The sodium is approximately 140. You add chloride to bicarbonate and you remove it from the sodium and you get the anion gap. What this anion gap measures is, practically this measures the unmeasured anions. Now what will happen if a foreign acid is inserted into the equation? Let's say an acid which is H plus anion is added to the solution. What will happen? This H plus ion will be taken care by some bicarbonates. Those bicarbonates will reduce in number and the unmeasured anion of this acid will increase. So what we will get in next picture is an increased anion gap because of a reduced bicarb. I'll go again. Anion gap means the unmeasured anions. Now body is obsessed with electroneutrality. The number of cations should be equal to number of anions. Anion gap means the measured cations minus measured anions. It is only the unmeasured anions which constitute the anion gap. Now cations are like sodium is 140, chloride is 100, bicarbonate is 24. So 100 plus 24 minus किया sodium में से बचा करीब 12. That is the anion gap. Now what if we add an acid into the solution and this acid yields its anion to the anion gap? The H plus is taken care by the bicarbonate, but the anion gap, the unmeasured anions are increased. This is an increased anion gap acidosis, right? Like you can see here. Again, in any condition, the balance of cations minus anions will be zero. The body will accept a reduced pH rather than going for haywire electroneutrality. Now we come to this question, the same question, and we calculate the anion gap. The sodium was 142 minus 100 plus 15 is equal to 27. The normal anion gap is 12. This anion gap is more than double of 12. So this patient, despite having an almost normal pH and a PCO2, what he's hiding is a profound big anion gap acidosis. She was mechanically ventilated for 2 days following a drug overdose. तो उस ventilation से हमने उसका pH तो manage कर लिया respiratory alkalosis से, but she still has a profound metabolic acidosis. We have to search for the cause. We have to look, is it drug related or the poison, if it was salicylate or whatever, I don't know. But you have to look at the electrolytes before jumping on conclusion about an ABG, especially the acidosis part, especially if the bicarbonate's on the lower side. So take home point is a normal pH, normal bicarb, normal CO2 also don't mean that the acid base status is all normal. You have to look at the electrolytes and calculate the anion gap. Now I have to wind up quickly. So I'll again put 1 or 2 more points, and that will be the end of it. One PG had asked me about intubation of acidotic patient. Ki sir, COVID wale patient, they are in acidosis and they are very sick and they are on BiPAP and suddenly they crash. So how to intubate them? This is one of those kind of patients. He is severely acidotic. His pH is 7.1, his bicarbonate is 11, his PCO2 is 37, and he is about to be ventilated. How will we intubate or ventilate this acidotic patient? Maybe someday I'll make a full video on that. But one point I would like to mention here is that these patients, especially in ICU, not about OT. In OT, I hope you don't never get such a patient. In ICU, these patients have to be pre-ventilated. We always talk about pre-oxygenation, but these patients have to be pre-ventilated. If nothing else, then maybe put them on BiPAP with a mask, no, NIV, ventilator wala NIV, put them on NIV, give them some good tidal volume, some good minute ventilation, wash out their CO2 a little, and then intubate them. These patients should never have an apnea period when you are just putting the laryngoscope and waiting ki tube ja rahi hai, tube nahi ja rahi hai, boozy dalo. These patients should be intubated within 10-15 seconds, not more. So acidotic patient, if you have to intubate them, you have to intubate them very quickly. Why? Because their pH is 7.1 and a little below that it becomes incompatible with life. Even 7.1 is barely compatible with life. So if we don't ventilate them for 30 seconds, their PCO2 rises to 60 or 50 and their pH goes to 6.8 and they will arrest. That is why most of the patients in ICU who are very sick, very acidotic, they crash during intubation. Maybe I'll make a separate video on that. Take home point number 8 is pre-ventilate to prevent arrest. Not only pre-oxygenate, but pre-ventilate. The last point is, let's see this ABG. This ABG is bad, definitely bad. The pH is a little lower side, PCO2 is a little higher side, bicarbonate is thoda sa badha hua, PaO2 is very, very low, saturation is low. But we have to treat the patient clinically rather than on their numbers. This could be a patient of COVID sitting in your ward. All those patients have similar kind of ABGs, but we don't go and intubate all of them. So before taking big decisions of intubation, we have to, again, I started with what is the clinical condition of patients, and I'll end with what is the clinical condition of the patient. You have to intubate the patient and not his ABG. So these are my take-home points. I'll read them for you. First, always look at the clinical picture. Ask for saturation on monitor before judging the ABG. Check the FiO2 before commenting on oxygenation. Check the PCO2. Is the patient ventilating adequately? If not, then what is the reason? Is the dead space increased or the minute ventilation decreased? Secondly, normal pH doesn't mean there is no acidosis, no alkalosis. pH is just a ratio of bicarb to CO2. Please don't give soda bicarb to every acidosis, especially respiratory acidosis. Compensation for metabolic acidosis, you have to check. PCO2 in metabolic acidosis should be equal to the last 2 digits of pH. फिर you check at the electrolytes. Is it an anion gap acidosis? Is it increased anion gap? Then look for the causes and treat them. Pre-ventilate to prevent arrest and treat the patient, not the ABG. That's my last slide. You can take a screenshot or whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Subodh. I think you have made it easy for all. This is like ABG made easy for all. So everything has been lucidly explained in very, very simple language. I hope everyone would have understood and been induced to now go and read in your textbooks and further practice it. Without practice, I hope nobody is master of ABG, and always correlate